Today we're talking Dillian Whyte versus Robert Helenius, which has been announced as the co-main event on the Anthony Joshua versus Carlos Takam show on the 28th of October. So if you like what you hear, please consider hitting the subscribe button. And if you do subscribe, jump down to the comment section. Let me know you have, and we'll start the conversation. So as I say, this is a late notice addition to the card, Dillian Whyte versus Robert Helenius. And I think with a lot of Eddie Hearn things, he's tried to pull something together at the end, in the last minute, to try and save a card. Mainly because the main event has crumbled and he's got this late notice replacement in Carlos Takam. I've got a video all about that on the channel, so if you're interested in that, check by the channel and watch that video. So on the actual card, we've got fights with Ufire, we've got Dave Allen, Frank Buglioni, and we've got some of the young guns also competing. So it isn't bad, but in terms of big blockbuster fights, it is somewhat lacking. This fight, even though it is late notice, does give some credibility, and I quite like the matchup. Okay, I quite like the matchup because I think there's questions on both Dillian Whyte and also Robert Helenius, whether they are top quality, whether they can ever get to the top. So we know that Dillian Whyte's got these aspirations of challenging for the title. He's been looking for Deontay Wilder, but it seems like that fight hasn't been able to be made. However, for me, I don't see how Dillian Whyte should be given an opportunity yet. He's had some okay fights, but when you look at what he's done, the only time he's fought someone of a high level, he has been stopped. Okay. In recent years, he's fought David Allen, who is a domestic level fighter, Ian Lewison, who's even lower, and he's fought Derek Chisora in a fight that was exceptionally close. And in my opinion, I would have edged it just to Derek Chisora. I remember when we were watching the fight live, I think it was probably a draw, but one of the rounds that I gave to Dillian Whyte, I think, was exceptionally close. So I can remember thinking 6 to Chisora, 5 to Whyte, 1 is in contention. So split down the middle, you could say that should have been a draw. Dillian Whyte just edged it and moved forward. So on the basis of that kind of resume, I don't see how he deserves to get the title shot. I think he needs at least another name for me to go, yep, okay, credible. Okay, despite the fact that we know that all kinds of people get title shots these days, and we've seen it is a joke. But in terms of actual deserving, I think he needs another name, and maybe Robert Helenius. We can take Robert Helenius out, goes into a title shot with a lot more confidence. Now, Robert Helenius, we were expecting to see earlier this year in a rematch against Derek Del Boy Chisora, and it was a fight that I was really looking forward to because, like most people, I have the opinion that Derek Chisora comfortably won the first fight, but the judges thought completely the opposite and gave a wide decision victory to Robert Helenius. And I've spoken about this at great length about why I believe that Robert Helenius was given the decision, and I think it's the style that Chisora has. It's an ugly style. It's close, infighting, grabbing and getting in close. And I think a lot of judges don't like to score that sort of style. There's a lot of punches that don't get scored, and because of that, Robert Helenius managed to get this wide decision victory quite some years ago. How long ago was it now? Let's just quickly check. 2011 was that. So that was about 6-7 years ago. And we were expected to see the rematch. And I think off of some good work that I'd seen of Derek Chisora in the last couple of years against the likes of Kubrat, Pulev, and against Dillian Whyte, despite the fact he's not getting the big wins, We know that Derek Chisora is a handful, and I thought if we could get some fair judging, I thought that Derek Chisora would beat Robert Helenius in the rematch. We see him actually lose to Yohan Duhaupas just a year and a half ago. So we know that he can be hurt. We know that he can be stopped. Okay, so it was an interesting fight. Got scrapped for one reason or another. We've now got this Dillian Whyte versus Robert Helenius fight, and I think it's going to be an interesting battle. If they're both 100% fit, we're going to see that Robert Helenius is the slightly bigger man. Although we know that Dillian Whyte kind of comes in a little bit heavier. So it's going to be an interesting perspective in that regard. But in terms of the actual fighting, we know that both men are good on the outside. For me, I think they lack on the inside. For Dillian Whyte, we've seen that when he gets taken, when someone tries to rough him up, that's when he loses the qualities that he's got. You want to see Dillian Whyte fighting from range, using good movement, trying to seriously wear down his opposition, and that's where you get the best Dillian Whyte. And it's the same thing with Robert Helenius. Robert Helenius is more traditional, more robotic. He likes to jab 1-2. Does have decent power, which is something that possibly has been of question in Dillian Whyte. Does he have that power? We saw in the last fight that he did stop his opponent with some pretty savage body shots. But apart from that, we've never really seen Dillian Whyte being capable of really hurting an opponent, really stopping an opponent. Okay, he's won on points or referee stoppage, and we've seen in those fights against David Allen and Derek Chisora, they went the full distance, and Dillian Whyte never really looked like he was going to get a stoppage in either fight. And you have to think that if he's moving up in class, that's always going to be a problem. It's always going to be a problem, because if you can't get your opponent to respect you through power, you have to work that much harder. You've got to rely on skill and movement, and that's always going to be a problem against the bigger guys. And that's the problem. I think we saw that against Anthony Joshua a couple of years ago. So, what do I think about this fight? How do I see it going? I believe that Dillian Whyte will win this fight if he fights to a clever game plan, and that is fighting at range, moving in and out, changing levels, using body shots as well, trying to really tire Robert Helenius. And it's possible that he could get a late stoppage. As I say, I always find it very unlikely that Dillian Whyte's going to get that one-punch knockout, but he could surprise me. For me, I think that Robert Helenius, his future in boxing is only on the decline. I don't see him being a serious player anymore. I've just seen too many holes in his game. So as I say, I believe that Dillian Whyte is going to win this, and he'll move forward, and he might actually get this world title shot, which would be interesting. And I still actually want to see him in a rematch against Anthony Joshua at some point, but we'd have to see. I think that will only happen if Dillian Whyte somehow gets to grips with one of the other titles. Okay, so that's my thoughts on this fight, which is taking place next week. If you've got any comments on it, jump down to the comment section below and start the conversation. Remember to consider hitting that subscribe button. It's always appreciated. And we'll see you in the next video.